nice to have you for the next 45 minutes. We're here with Premier League Tonight. If you've not seen the show before, we sit and talk football for the next 45 minutes, and we want you to be part of the show, so just use the hashtag PL Tonight to join in the conversation. We're getting messages through already, lots of messages from Spurs fans. If you're a Spurs fan, you're watching this, and you've got a thought, we'd love to hear from you. I thought you were bringing the beers.
You said you was bringing them.
You demanded beers on this very show.
You said you'd bring them.
And when I arrived outside, there was a guy from a local brewery called Jubilant, and he had a whole thing of beer for me, which were in the green room.
Well, there's no good there, are they?
Yeah, well, you could probably do with a beer after that, couldn't you?
I would love a beer.
I bet you would. Whether we can get the beers from there into here. And while we do that, loads still come on this evening's Premier League Tonight. We're going to start though by looking back on the last 52 hours of Premier League football here on BT Sport, because it has been a busy old week.
Absolutely ridiculous decisions that just define the whole game for us.
Coutinho, what a hit it is!
Absolutely priceless!
Don't write us off because we keep fighting to try and prove you wrong.
Crystal Palace have turned this one around.
Yankovic, straight red card.
Carney and Manchester United are running away with it. He's reaching for the red card. It's 9.
Wow, what a turning point that could be in this season's title race.
What a beauty. Manchester City, they are mean and magnificent. Lifted in by Maddison, by Iheanacho. And Leicester are 2 to the good. Lingard, is he going to finish this? 2 goals. That boy was superb. What a debut. Carlo Ancelotti's Everton celebrate a rare victory in Yorkshire. And it's Brighton's night against the champions at Anfield.
That was sensational. Finally get to see the true signs of what Potter ball is all about.
There's contact, it's a penalty. Jorginho. And Chelsea's bright start has been rewarded by the first goal. Starving delight for Chelsea.
Well, it's been a really interesting last couple of days, and what a fascinating game we've seen at that stadium as well this evening. But this is how the Premier League table looks after this busy old week. Leicester City, once again, doing brilliantly this season, as they have done recently under Brendan Rodgers, as they did last season. Liverpool will feel very frustrated indeed. And why can't West Ham challenge for the top, or why can't Everton challenge for the Champions League spots? Aston Villa continuing to do well this season despite disappointing result in the we've got them live on BT Sport at the weekend. Down towards the bottom, Sheffield United are fighting for their lives. They had 1 win all season. They've picked up 2 wins in the last 10 days. Tricky for West Brom and Fulham, which means that Burnley and Newcastle can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief after the results over the last couple of days. Lots and lots of Chelsea fans getting in touch with us. Rudesh says Son without Kane is like a car without an engine. Anthony says Mourinho's pattern of letting the opposition play the ball while we sit and pounce on the counter-attack is not a style worthy of a team aiming to challenge for the Premier League title. And Con says Jose Mourinho is such a frustrating manager. A decade ago unstoppable, now he's stopping his own teams from playing. If you want to share your thoughts, use the hashtag PL Tonight. We want to hear from you. We also want to hear from the boss. Jose Mourinho is talking to Des. Thank you, Jose. Thank you. He's not happy, and if you read between the lines, I mean, he's effectively saying at the top of that interview there wasn't really much in it, and it was a penalty that shouldn't have been given that ended up winning the game for them. If you're a Tottenham fan sitting at home listening to that reaction from your manager after that performance, what are you feeling?
Yeah, but no, you have to remember, Jake, like, players and managers, you have a different job than just always pleasing the fans, right? And, you know, I'm sure if he was stepping away from football, he might have a different answer. But he's looking at his team that's very fragile at the minute and lacking confidence. And as a manager, it's his job to piece all that together, maintain their confidence with the game that's coming up on Sunday. Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, you almost have to lie. You know, the reality is, the chances weren't there for Chelsea, but they dominated the whole game and probably should have scored 2 or 3 more quite easily. We know that, but that's not Jose's job. Jose's job now is to try and drag his team off the floor because he knows this is a moment where they're in a tough spot. They're struggling, so he can't be doubling down on that and letting. Because we're going to do that anyway. That's what we do as pundits, and the fans are going to do it. Everyone's going to double down on how bad Tottenham have been. So as a manager, it's his job to protect them and then try and guide them back to what they were doing in the earlier stages of the season.
JJ, there's only Kane and Reguilon that's injured. He's making it sound like there's, or perceiving there's sort of 5, 6, 7, 8, 13 regulars that's injured. We're really vulnerable at the minute. We've got to try and get through this.
Yeah.
This is
If you went through the numbers of creativity at Tottenham and kind of who creates the goals, we all know that it's going to be Son, Kane, Kane, Son, Son, Kane, Kane, Son, and you have took a link out of that team that you just can't. That obviously, which is partly his fault because he's been so heavily reliant on one source within the team, and you take it out, and it's been quite clear over the last couple of games that they can't survive from an attacking point of view. Son. I didn't even see Son today. We was having a conversation the other day. Does Son get into Liverpool's front three? Over the last 3 games, you're going, well, not a chance. No, not as an individual performance. Without Kane, no, you don't get anywhere near it. With Kane, he's a world beater. So he's finding it difficult now to obviously find the solutions creatively to get this team back playing the way that he wants them to play.
But I just hope that his conversation and the way he talks to the team is very different to what I just saw there.
Yeah.
Because that was an excuses kind of filled interview more than anything, and I hope, like you say, I understand as a manager coming out and dressing down your players in public maybe isn't the way to do it in today's game, but I just really do hope that them players are getting a message that's very different to that interview. And listen, we can talk about Son and we can talk about Kane, Son not performing today because Kane's not there, but that doesn't get away from the fact that there did not seem to be any game plan, like even getting out from the back. There's no movement. JJ done a bit at half time. There's no game plan. There's no like direction with his team. I don't see it. I just see people playing off the cuff, hoping to get it to Ndombele at the moment, who's going to do something off the cuff to get Son in. If that happens, Son had 1 shot in the whole game.
Yeah.
And that was in the 89th minute.
And we can focus on individual players and their own qualities, but let's take Brighton as a really good example, where I know you work as a coach with the youngsters, and we'll talk about them later in the show. But if you take the Brighton and the Tottenham squads, you would argue that Tottenham have more quality than Brighton in terms of individual players.
That's a fact.
Yeah. So then you watch Brighton play and you see the plan and you know what they're trying to do, and sometimes it doesn't happen, but you see the progression. That's the problem, I think, that football fans have, is they want to be able to identify with their team and go on the journey with them.
We sit here as pundits and we're looking for patterns of play to create some sort of content at half-time or full-time to analyse the game. I can't see any positive patterns within that Spurs team, especially in the first half. Well, it must be down to either the players, like he said, maybe not taking on the instructions and implementing it in the game, or they're not coaching the team to be able to play and have an idea to get out of certain situations. Because you can look at the way certain teams play in this league. You're talking about Brighton. You can see that they're playing sometimes through memory, through repetition, what they've done on the training pitch. I don't see that with this Spurs team.
Over the last couple of games, they've been quite lost, and that's why you've seen a different performance in the second half. I think against Brighton, they are a team that are playing with fear, and I think Jose doesn't trust them defensively at all. So they're always contained. You don't have that freedom as a player, I don't think, in this team at the minute to go into dangerous areas of the park and get the ball and receive the ball on the half turn and nick ones round the corner into the forwards. And they don't have that freedom at the minute. And then it gets to a point where in the second half he goes, well, that was horrendous. I need to do something. And he either changes personnel or he goes, just try and do something.
But JJ, they did a few weeks ago when they're top of the league.
No, but they had a way of playing then, to be fair to them. They had a way of playing at that point, which was, by all accounts, a lot of people didn't enjoy watching it, but it was very defensive, players behind the ball and catching teams out on the counter-attack. And that Liverpool game, that's why it was so big, because when those chances were missed in that Liverpool game, it's flipped the season on its head. These players have completely lost their confidence from that moment, because maybe, all of a sudden...
How can you be so fragile for one game, one instance, to actually change the whole mentality and shape of a season?
I think
that is crazy fragility.
No, it's not just that moment. There was another game after that. Then they went to Wolves, I think, and it was the game where they went ahead and then they drop off and then
Wolves, yeah.
they concede late. Leicester at home. There's many of those types of moments where all of a sudden he's realising this defence is nowhere near good enough, and it's like, instead of going free, go and play. Let's be more expressive and expansive. He goes like that and goes, right, everyone get back here and just try and defend, and if we can catch teams out with our world-class players like Kane and Son, we do.
Even when they play when they were doing well, when they was catching teams on the counter-attack, You can't sustain that. You can't be a top team at the top of the league. We can go back to someone like Leicester and go, well, they done it throughout the season, but they were drilled. They knew what they was doing. You know, you can't tell me that with Jose playing that constrained football and then going up to Kane into Son, it still seemed off the cuff.
He wasn't going to win the league. He wasn't going to win the league, but we have to all sit here and go, we've probably all sat in these seats at one point and gone, yeah, it's a great style of play. You know, against City when they were doing it, and against other teams when they played against Arsenal, we've all sat here and gone, yeah, teams know what's coming, but they can't stop it. So they had something. How they've lost it is what he's got to figure out.
Well, in the recent run of games, they're 15th in the league. So, you know, talk of a title or maybe even a trophy is tricky at the moment. Obviously, they've got the League Cup final coming up. Question from Bob for the three of you to the panel. As a professional player, would you be bored and unmotivated performing in a team that seems as directionless as Spurs at the moment? And that is an interesting question. You know, what is the experience like as a professional footballer in a team like that?
Well, look, let's take Son, for instance, tonight. Influential this season for Spurs. I think he had one touch in Chelsea's box before the strike at the end. You know him as a personality, as a person, bubbly, smiley. How long is that going to last with that tonight?
I think
can't go on.
No, I think that's where you do struggle. You know, those attacking players, you can lose them pretty quick if you're not giving them service. Like, we can sit here till we're blue in the face and criticise Vinicius, but realistically, how much service did he have today? He had nothing, did he? Really, there was nothing coming across the box for him to get on the end of. He had one cross which he should have done better with, but. I've always thought as well, though, you know, I mean, in midfield in particular, and as professionals, we do shaping training. It's the most boring thing you can do. We hate it. And there are times in certain games you play a certain way that is not always enjoyable, but you do it to win games of football. That happens as a professional, don't get me wrong. It's not enjoyable. And, you know, right now, it feels like they're all playing that way. But I feel like it affects the attacking players more than, say, it would affect Rio. I mean, Rio might look from the back and go, we're having one, we're not having enough of the ball, you need to get on the ball, you need to do this. But we all are just trying to do our jobs within that. You know, I saw some stuff at half time. As a midfield player, I'd be ashamed. Like, if you're not looking to get on the ball as a midfield player, you shouldn't be on the pitch. That's the bottom line. You should never be hiding from the ball. So that's what at times to me it looked like in that first.
I think one area that you'd say that Jose Mourinho, you got to put him to one side with certain things. There's been a lot of individual mistakes as well. It's not all just Jose Mourinho and his coaching or management that can be called into question. I think there are individual mistakes within this team, especially the defenders recently, that are letting the team down. Like, it's a tight game in terms of the goals and chances created today, but in terms of possession and the way a team played, Chelsea were far and above the better team. And his excuse, like he's saying there as well, there's not many chances. It was a silly mistake for a penalty. There's not much in it. But I think the bigger picture for Tottenham to improve, all of the fundamentals and the team shape and the way that the team's identity is need to be put into place for there to be good growth over a short and long-term period of time.
How do you see this playing out? I mean, there's people asking on social this evening, and they're getting in touch with us, whether this sort of has echoes of the end of his time at Manchester United. Does it feel like that yet, or too early for that?
I think it's too early. You know, I think he can turn it around, definitely. It all depends on how the players respond, though. You know, we spoke at the start of the show. Players run dressing rooms. Players almost run football clubs at the minute. And if they are responding to their manager, and the manager's getting the best out of them, then you'll visually see it. At the minute, we're seeing a quite despondent team, but I'm seeing enough of a reaction, you know, in terms of the spirit of the team right now to know that Jose still has them. So, in my opinion, as long as he still has them, then, yeah, he stays.
All Spurs fans are fuming. Let's not get it wrong. They're all fuming, but they're hanging on to a glimmer of hope that there could be silverware. Just because it's him.
League Cup.
If it was anyone else, any other manager, they'd want him out. But because it's Jose, it's like there could be a trophy, and
if this standard of football continued,
you asked this at the end of the first part. The answer is yes.
But this is before this game. If this is the way Spurs are going to play football for the foreseeable, and you win the League Cup, is that enough?
Listen, am I going to be personally happy? No, I want to see a better brand of football. Are Spurs fans going to be happy? Yes, they want a trophy.
No, without fans in the stadium, it's cool. If the first fans are in a stadium, it's a very different temperature.
Can you imagine at half-time and full-time?
But I would not be surprised if Spurs win the League Cup. The one-off game, Jose can set his team up to stifle teams, to hit teams on the break. Kane will be back then. It's a different story. We'll see that one-off game.
Fascinating stuff. Right, we're going to talk actually straight after the break about culture at a football club. Steve is working with the young players at Brighton. All these guys obviously came through the academy system. They were schooled in how a certain team or a certain manager likes to play, and we'll talk about philosophy and culture at football clubs after the break. Keep getting in touch. #PL Tonight. See you shortly. Welcome back. It's lovely to have you with us for Premier League Tonight this evening. Right, we're going to talk about culture at a football club. We've just been discussing exactly what is the plan, what is the focus, what is the culture under Jose Mourinho at Tottenham. And the man furthest to my left is very much involved in the culture at Brighton Football Club. We saw an amazing night last night at Anfield. Graham Potter doing the business, remarkable. Just explain to us, when you go into a football club, what gets said at the level that you're operating at, leading right up to the first team? Are you sort of part of the wider conversation at Brighton?
It filters down to an extent to us. I mean, Graham Potter came in and took charge in front of Chris Hughton. So the board, the owner, they wanted to see a change of direction, a change of brand, a change of football. And Dan Ashworth come in. We spoke earlier on in the green room about Dan. And this DNA that they want, they basically wanted to... The way to explain it was, if someone's looking from outer space and looking at a football match going on with no jerseys on there, you can tell in possession what team is Brighton, out of possession what team is Brighton. Okay, so urgency, intensity when you haven't got the ball, when you have got the ball, expansive. That then filters all the way down. I'm coaching down to 16s, it starts coming down to us because there's a philosophy of they want to produce young players from the academy at a younger age as well. So from an under 16s level, when they start progressing to an under 18s, it filters through, it goes through, the DNA goes through the whole system with them. So when they get into the first team, it's just simultaneously.
So how much of that? So we're sitting here all going, Graham Potter, what a coach. Obviously, the way the world is, there will be a point where Graham Potter probably moves on from Brighton. I'm guessing from what you're saying that DNA and the way that Brighton will play will remain.
Yeah.
So how much of it is Graham Potter and how much of it is maybe like Dan Ashworth, Brighton, whoever's in place?
I think the whole ethos is this is the style that we want to play. Let's go and find a manager that does it. I think Swansea was probably one of the first ones that done it in this country as well. And the manager fits into the mould of that football club. Now, hopefully Graham Potter's going to be there for many years. And there's going to be some successful years because this season, you look at performances, they've been fantastic. Yeah. Points haven't been on par with that. That's hopefully going to start to turn. It's only a matter of time before they turn. And I think the missing part of the jigsaw is really a real top-class finisher because the chances that they do create, the way they play football. We talked about the Spurs game the other day. Two teams contrasting their ends of the league. Brighton just hovering above relegation. No fear. Play out from the back. Create chances. Spurs, lacking of confidence, and it just goes through.
So have you got like drills that you have like got to stick by, or is it just more like a way of playing? So if they came to watch one of your young teams and keepers kicking it out, or it's just going long a lot, would you get pulled and be like, that's not how we do it?
No. There's not a sort of like a blueprint of right. Here's a playbook. These are our plays. It's kind of a more right in possession. What do we want to look like? And it's down then to the coaches to stamp their authority. Yeah. But it's a case of, right, out of possession, what do we look like? And then that really goes down, and even down to the point of creating the complete player. We have sort of like individual programs for every single player now. Every player in the academy has got their own DNA pamphlet, and that goes through with them, through the age group, so the next coach sees the strengths, the weaknesses of that kid, what they need to work on.
Are you trying to create a player to fit the certain DNA, like every position has a certain DNA, this is how he has to look, and then you try and create that from the under 14s upwards through the team to the first team?
So it's even down to recruitment now, they're looking at players that will fit the mould. So centre-halves, someone exactly like yourself, a ball-playing centre-half, someone that wants to defend.
They're hard to come by, man.
They are. And they cost a lot of money. The centre-halves that want to play, comfortable on the ball, can pass out. Wingers that would do the hard yards going back, getting forward, numbers, assists. It goes down. The stats and the analysis and the stuff that go into it is so deep, and it's becoming kind of like football in the States, kind of like American football, where there is a playbook and there is
numbers,
a play for this and there's a play for that, and it's slowly working.
It's so much deeper than when we started out. It was just a naked eye. is he a good player or not? Well, I saw him last week. He weren't the best. I've been to watch him 3 times. Actually, he's decent. We'll give him a go. Like, it was more. It wasn't. Oh, you know what? He's got 6 assists, and he's got. It wasn't like that. There was no history or data-driven kind of analysis to decide whether you take a player. It was just, is he doing the business on the pitch or not?
What is interesting, though, Rio, I mean, I think all 3 of us came through a system where, you're talking about DNA of Brighton. I know at Forest, the playbook was, it was always, keep it on the floor, 1-2 touch, 1-2 touch. That was as far as it kind of went. That is, this is how we play football. I mean, same at Arsenal. West Ham's youth system at your point, and then kind of knocking it down to Joe Cole, Glenn Johnson, Defoe, Carey. We all kind of came through a similar kind of, I suppose, platform to be on at a football club where there is a DNA and there's a way of playing football, and when you do have that identity, there is a big difference. You feel like you're a part of something. We used to call them, there was a centre of excellence when we were playing, but that centre of excellence for me at Forest, I was quite proud of the fact that we played a brand of football that wasn't just, I used to play against teams where they used to just launch it, and I used to think, oh God, I'd hate to be playing in that team. We get it down and play it. And whenever we played against Arsenal, it was a nightmare, and whenever we played against West Ham, it was a nightmare, because we always had similar ethos as to how the game should be played.
But these years for them young players that are being coached by Steve and the coaches alike around the country, these are so important, because I guarantee all 3 of us will say the same thing, in that those years, they carry through your professional career. Those fundamentals that you learn, like at West Ham, a big thing was like the 3rd man run. Up, back and through. Like, them things don't change in football. There's some basic fundamentals that never change, and they're there for life. And just to be able to have them things imprinted in your head on a consistent repetition day by day, they stay with you for life.
But isn't this the way that sensible football clubs should be running themselves? Let's take the model of hire a manager. How many staff do you want? I want 8 staff. Okay, bring them all in. 4-year contracts for everyone? Okay, right. 6 months later, it's not really working out. You're not winning games of football. So you get rid of the manager. You get rid of all the assistants. They all get paid up. You go and get a new manager, and then a new philosophy, and a new style of play, and a new backroom staff, and then they all go after 6 months or 2 years or however long it takes. How much better to have someone like Dan Ashworth, as they have at Brighton, to go, right, here's the philosophy. You want to come and be the manager here? This is what you fit into. This is the kind of manager we go and find and we bring in. But it also takes bravery, because if you have a brilliant season and Graham Potter says, do you know what, I want to change the way we play football, I want to do this, you have to be brave enough to go, leave then. Because this is what Brighton Football Club stands for.
Yeah, but you go for sustainability, which is that model, or you go for a lottery. And I think some of the bigger clubs have been on the receiving end of when they've gone, actually, we'll let a manager come in and just plunk his philosophy in here. And then Man United done it. Louis van Gaal comes in, he's got a certain brand of football. Jose Mourinho comes in and says, these players aren't fit for purpose for what I want to do. So it's an absolute overhaul of
which
players,
costs millions and
millions
there's
of
no
pounds.
forward plan.
So I see this as the model. I think Man United are changing what they're doing now.
To do that, you need talent. It's as simple as that. Like,
and time.
You've named Dan Ashworth. There's not many, I suppose, more that you would. I think Norwich have got a decent system. You'd never ever stop talking about it. So Norwich have got a decent system. But
Stuart Webber.
But it's true. You need.
Don't leave.
It's about having good managers. It's about having good coaches. You need good people to implement these good systems. Then you need around all that good footballers. To be able to carry that all out.
It's easier to be a good footballer if you totally understand the system that you're being asked to operate in, and also after a couple of years, by the time you get to under 18. If you don't fit that football club or you don't fit that philosophy, you wouldn't be there, because you're being groomed for the first.
Sorry to jump in. I think what that system and that model gives a player at every single level, coach underneath the coaches like Steve, is absolute clarity. And I don't think a footballer can thrive when there's clarity like that. I can see what's being asked of me. I can see it. It's almost like it's on the drawing board every day I go there. It's so much easier to perform at your premium like that.
It's a big call, because especially nowadays, football at the highest level in the Premier League is a results business. It's as cutthroat as that. It's a results business, and it's instant as well. If you want something done, and it's life as well in general. You want something to buy, pick up your phone, it's a click of a button. Football now is a results instant business, so it's a big call from Brighton to do it, and there was going to be speed bumps along the way, but there's some real positive signs, especially with performances. That's the biggest kit. That was the biggest kit. And then they just listen, it'll come, and the message just filters down.
Lots of questions coming in about this, unsurprisingly. Mo says kids don't need DNA, they need imagination, courage and confidence. I mean, can't that be part of a football club's DNA?
Well, listen, they get that. They get that, and they get that in abundance, especially coming through every academy now. It's the same case as every academy up and down the country. Listen, don't worry about mistakes. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. You go and get the ball again on the edge of the box, and we want to play out. But you'll never get shouted at. The thing now is with academy players is they get too comfortable, in my opinion. They come into the system at young as 7, 6, 7, 8. By the time they're 13, 14, it just becomes a custom that they're an academy player as such. And then in the real cutthroat business kind of gets lost away because it slowly comes back when they're 16 or 18 again.
When we were kids, winning and losing was massive.
Cool. Yeah.
Is it the same in the system now?
No, it's not. I think that the biggest part and the fundamentals that's been lost along the way is a winning mentality. Depending on what club you're coming through, like at Arsenal where we come through, winning mentality was ingrained straight away. As young as 10 years old, we are at the Arsenal. We go to win games. At Brighton, it just seems probably a bit nice. You know, that sort of nasty edge has kind of gone away. The dark arts, you know, the whatever it takes to win a football match, are slowly gone. And it's ingrained in them fundamentals that they'll never go away. They've been there for years and years, and they'll still be there with years to come.
Listen, we've got to take a quick break. Go on.
No, you can go to dark arts at 10. Can you imagine? 10-year-olds throwing elbows.
We're going to be a winner. We're going to carry on this conversation now in a couple of moments. We will just pick up where we left off. A couple of minutes, and we'll be back for the final part of Premier League tonight. We'll carry on talking. See you in a second. We're talking culture, we're talking youth team football. Steve is working very hard with the under-16s at Brighton. Here's a question that a few people have actually got in touch with. They're saying that it sounds brilliant, but what happens to individuality, to flair, when a player comes along who, I don't know, just plays like Lionel Messi? How do you fit them into your system?
Well, you don't want to lose that. You want them to come in and be creative, and there's positions like that. You know, depending on whether you're going to play a 4-3-3, you know, wide men coming in, you know, so you just adapt to the players that's got it, but you still want them to follow a DNA. You know, there's the pressures that there are in football. There's so many pressures away from academy football and life in general for youngsters, but when they come in, they've got to realise these are the steps to becoming a professional football player.
The key for you, Jermaine, is that you still breed players that want to win. Isn't it? That mentality side is essential.
Yeah. I think we were all just having a little brief chat about it then, and it's just that there comes a stage as a footballer, and to be fair, Siddy, you know, he mentioned it and alluded to it, which is that point where you're expected to deliver. And it's all well and good kind of like, right, we're creating this culture where we play this type of football and it's okay if you lose it and so on and so forth. But I also went through a period where, my manager believed in me and was very much, you know, Paul Hart at Forest, he was at Leeds before that, and he was incredible at kind of like the passive moving, but also the mentality side of things where it was like, you know, you win your tackles, your headers, you work your socks off. But winning and losing was big to a point where if we lost games, like, we knew about it. It was like in the next day, running. It was a tough school. So that when you were kind of pushed forward to reserves or first team football, you were prepared. And even like we were talking about youth cup games, that's why they were so good, because it used to like take us all out for a meal the night before. And all of a sudden you're thinking, this is different. I'm usually at home, like at my mum's house, like preparing for this game, but I'm out for a meal, and then you go into the game and there's fans coming to the game, and it's like, wait, this is a different environment now. And so many good players don't survive with that type of pressure or that type of environment. And you know, even personally, I had games where I loved it. Like, fans are here. This is amazing. I can fly. And then the ones, if I had a bad game in that moment, you have to find something in yourself to come back and be like, actually, no, I can deal with that. And that builds character. And that, you need to have those moments as well as a young player.
Coaches, I'm interested to find out, like, when we were growing up, as JJ was saying there, the managers and the coaches used to get into you.
Yeah,
they would drill you. If you didn't produce on a weekend, you'd know about it in the change room at half time. I remember Harry Redknapp and Frank Lampard Sr. coming into the change room in a cup game once in the youth team and absolutely dressing down the whole team, going bananas. Yeah. Like, is that allowed? Does it happen anymore?
Yeah, I think that's
character building.
Yeah, that is character building, and there's an element of that is a fine line in terms of are you going into a bullying case, especially with academy players and youngsters. And I think it just goes from club to club. You know, our place, we can be like that in a subtle way. Whereas my oldest boy is at AFC Wimbledon, and you can imagine what a Wimbledon way would be like. You know, it's win at all costs. If you don't do your running, the hard yards, then you've got to run after the game, things like that. So look, there's massive pressure on youngsters, and the biggest thing for me now is social media as well. And we spoke about when we was coming through, and if I was playing against a Joe Cole or Carrick, you knew that they played for West Ham, and then when you played against them, you'd see them and you go, when you said like, wow, is that him? But then you wouldn't see him again, or you'd see him again when you met up for England. Whereas now, these kids are seeing each other all the time, and they're comparing themselves with kids that play for City, United, because there's instant clips coming on their social media account. So instead of just going by the name and going and not knowing what he's really up to, they're seeing it, that sort of social media life, week in, week out, comparing themselves to players that they don't really know, but the stats and the videos is just playing its part.
It's unrealistic as well.
It is unrealistic.
So it's like social media, living my best life stuff. It's not really realistic. It's a bit of a fairy tale kind of picture of realism, really. So,
but then you also want your kids to be inspired by watching sort of amazing clips and stuff. It's a fine line, you know. Because I have to say,
I remember watching West Ham in an FA Youth Cup final. I can't remember who it was against. I think Joey got a goal. Coventry. Exactly. We all know the game.
I was there.
You was there. That's what I'm saying. We all know the game. That whole team. I remember watching that at home, and that was the first time I watched a young team on television, and I was inspired. Like, I watched that team and I went, they're a good youth team, and that stadium was near enough full. It was like that made you as a young player go, I want to be a professional footballer. It's a top club playing good stuff. It was, like I said, loads of good young players in that team, and so you're right in terms of the inspiring part, but that worries me, that aspect of the young players.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the modern world, isn't it? We're all comparing our own actual lives to other people's edited.
But on the social media, sorry, Jay, on the social media, them young players that are putting out their clips, you're only seeing the good clips. They could, you would never know if that a clip just come on of a player doing a bit of skill, whipping it, hitting the crossbar, or going in top corner.
Yeah. It's like Rio with his biceps, but not actually that big.
But they could have lost 4-1. They could have lost 4-1, but you never know that. Yeah. And it's so different. What do you say?
But he only shows us the pull-ups on his Instagram that he actually completes.
I'll bench press you in a minute. You carry on.
Let's go. That's the content. That's the content people are tuning in for on Premier League tonight. Should we just do it now on the table?
I suspect the blushes.
Listen, thank you so much for sharing all that about Brighton. It's interesting. One final question. Do you feel they are totally insulated now from, let's say, battling against relegation and picking up the phone to Sam Allardyce and saying, come in and save us? You believe that they will stick to the plan, whatever?
Oh, 100%. 100%. They're only looking up. They're only looking up.
Love it. I love it. But that's really interesting. And thank you as well for your comments. It's nice to see us trending on Twitter tonight with everyone chucking in questions and thoughts to us. Look, Peter, we're going to finish with a relevant topic to the week. We had a little bit of controversy a couple of nights. I'm panicking about the bench pressing. We had a bit of controversy a couple of nights ago. 2 red cards in quick succession, back-to-back here on BT Sport. The incidents looked very similar. One's been rescinded, one hasn't. Can you explain what's going on?
Well, let's just take Luis for the Arsenal game first of all. I mean, that one there, everybody in football knows from me that that's a red card that can defend. That one for me was nailed on.
Okay, and the other one?
And the other one in Bednarek in the Manchester United game, he goes over, he gives the penalty kick. Now, for the VAR to intervene, the VAR is looking there for elements to justify that particular foul, but to make sure he got the sanction correct, because Bednar had made no attempt on the ball. However, when you fast forward now to the commission that's been meeting at the FA, the commission have a slightly different agenda to the referee and the VAR. Whereas the commissioner can now add in the contact, they can add in the context of the so-called foul, and they can add in any mitigating circumstances, such as was the forward actually off balance and going over. So their agenda is slightly different to the match officials on the day, and indeed the VAR.
And finally, does it bother you that the referee can go over, look at the monitor, he has the VAR officials helping him out, and still, between them, they come to the wrong decision?
Well, it's only the wrong decision because the commission's allowed the appeal to succeed. As a referee, I still think Mike Dean was correct. There is contact there, and if there is contact, in his opinion, he gives the foul. Now, who's to know how much contact there was there to make Martial fall over? Again, from a refereeing, from a pure refereeing angle, I'd support that decision. But of course, the commission have other options to gauge themselves with.
All right, listen, thank you very much for your time this evening. And Peter Walton has hung around for about 9 hours to deliver that for us. So he's over there in his little room in the corner. Thanks, Peter.
All the best. He just got paid by the word.
You can go. Nash. Gents, thanks so much. Really enjoyed that this evening. Thank you.
Thanks for the beers as well. Appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll sort the beers out right now. They better be in the fridge when we get in there. Right, we're going to finish with you guys and the ones that got away. Thanks for watching this evening's Premier League tonight. Good night.
When I got away was selling Gary Cahill. I know he was after first team football, and I know at the time we had Olaf Malberg and Martin Larsson, who were some of the best defenders I've seen in my lifetime at Villa Park, but that one never sat right with me.
How amazing would it have been to see someone like Serge Gnabry still at the club, playing with them and forming this awesome trio up front? It's such a shame that he was seen as injury-prone during his youth career at the club, and then obviously had that ill-fated loan spell at West Brom where Tony Pulis didn't think he was good enough. And now he's ripping out for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga and not for the Red and White North London.
It, of course, is Alan Shearer. Somehow was let go by the club. Played in goal, believe it or not, when he was a youngster. But as a 16, 17-year-old, went down to Southampton, came to Blackburn, rejected Manchester United, go to Newcastle. The rest is history.
You just can't look any further than Kevin De Bruyne. Came to us as a highly rated 20-year-old from Werder Bremen. Had a few injuries, but the main reason he didn't make it was Jose just didn't have any faith in him, didn't give him an opportunity. And then a couple of years later, he comes back to City. He's now the best midfielder in the world and running wings around us every time we play them.